Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Reading Room Ruffians. Our podcast is all things library, and that means we review books, talk of upcoming programs, library stories, guest speakers, and generally we talk about things that happen in our library. We're a group of librarians from Jackson County, West Virginia, except for Zach, and today we are going to discuss a book that we recently read, Scythe by Neal Shusterman. Before we get started on that, I'm going to hand it over to Ariel, who is going to talk about some upcoming programs.
Okay, so we have, if you don't know, we have two different branches to the Jackson County Library, one in Ripley, West Virginia, and one in Ravenswood. A couple programs that are coming up at the Ravenswood branch is on May 16th, they're going to have an adult event where they do plant swaps. So basically, you bring in plants that you want to trade with other people, and you can get new plants. So I've always wanted to go to one, but I don't have enough plants to swap.
Yeah. You can take some of my bamboo.
There we go. I'll swap bamboo. Okay, and then the other program coming up in May is on May 23rd, and it's an adult nutrition program. Now, I don't know much about this program because it's still kind of in the planning stages. But it is something that, you know, if you're interested in stuff like that, something to look forward to. The only thing I think that we have coming up at the Ripley branch is we are going to be getting ready for summer reading. And that's because we are so burnt out on Minicon stuff that we're not planning a whole bunch for May. I'm sure we will have a few adult programs and maybe a couple story times for kids, but nothing like major until June when we start summer reading. Also, I apologize for my voice this time, guys. I've been sick, so my voice is a little off.
All right, I think that's going to lead us into our Scythe talk. Carla, you and Zach read it the most recently. Do you guys want to start off with your thoughts?
I really enjoyed the book overall. And it totally sets up for like the rest of them in the series, which I unfortunately won't get to read or listen to for a couple more months because of school. But this class that I have taken, it was on young adult literature, and I have read some of the best books. I've read some I really didn't like, but I've read some really, really good ones, and this is among the top 3 that I have read this semester. So it's really, really good. Zach, you want to talk a little bit?
Yeah, I absolutely love this book. Not going to lie, I've actually read the second one and I'm halfway done with the third one.
Wow.
So it's been pretty good.
Fair.
Wild ride, huh?
It's pretty good. The other 2 books I don't think are quite as good as the first one, but they're still really interesting. And they do explain a lot more about the world. I'm going to try to keep that discussion limited because I don't want to spoil it for people. It's kind of fun learning about how the rest of the world works. But yeah, this is a fantastic book series. It's one of the best ones I've read recently. So I've been enjoying it, and there's a bunch to talk about in it.
So let me see here. Ariel has read this way before, and then we read it, last year, I think?
Yeah, we read it last year. For book club. And then me and Mallory just reread it, so we would be current on all our ideas. Because, like, when Carla was reading it, she asked me a question about how it ended, and I was like, oh, because I couldn't remember where exactly the first book ended, and I didn't want to give anything away. So we reread it. So we would know exactly where it ends and everything like that. So we are up to date, ready to talk about all of it. Do we want to give a brief summary of what the book is before we get in depth?
Yeah. I think that would be a good idea.
Okay, I'm not necessarily the best at describing books, obviously. Since
everybody dies. It's great.
I mean, well, when I described it to Carla, she didn't want to read it. So I may not be the best person to summarize it, but
everybody dies and it's great.
I can't help that I like what I like.
You want to do it?
Sure. So the basic premise is this is a world in which an AI is in charge of everything, and there is no more death, no more natural death, at least. If you do die, if you get killed, or I guess you can't die of old age, because once you get to a certain point, you will essentially reset yourself back to a specific age, whichever one you want, down to 21. And you also, if you do die, you get hit by a car, you jump off a bridge or something like that, you get repaired and fixed. Everybody has these nanites inside of them that will heal them a little bit or help decrease the severity of emotions, etc. But in order to deal with this fact that there is no death anymore and the possible overpopulation problems, you have people called Scythes. The Scythes are people who are allowed to what they call glean people, but it's essentially permanently kill people, which is a big deal in a world where there's no more old age, no more death from old age, no more death from basically anything. There's only a few things that can kill you permanently, and Scythes are the people who can do it. And the story basically follows 2 apprentices to one of the Scythes, and it goes throughout their entire apprenticeship. Bunch of stuff happens, which we'll talk about, and it ends with at the very end of their apprenticeship, essentially, when one of them becomes Scythe.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and read the synopsis on the back of the book. It says, "Thou shalt kill. A world with no hunger, no disease, no war, no misery. Humanity has conquered all those things, and has even conquered death. Now Scythes are the only ones who can end life, and they are commanded to do so in order to keep the size of population under control. Citra and Rowan are chosen to apprentice to a Scythe, a role that neither wants. These teens must master the art of taking life, knowing that the consequence of failure could mean losing their own. They learn living in a perfect world comes only with a heavy price." Which I think is a great synopsis.
It really is.
For a book.
Perfect.
I mean, it's not 100% accurate, but yeah.
Yes, it's 100%.
It is.
No,
it's just
because
not
you
detailed.
can die.
It's not super
from other
detailed.
things.
There's only
Permanently.
one other thing that permanently kills you.
No, there's like 2 other things, and there's actually a third thing that you learn about later. But
Oh, well, I only know of
Not
one.
in this book.
no, there are the
So
2 things.
in this book,
No, you can die of fire and acid in this book, can't you?
Oh, I don't remember acid.
acid's not in this one.
Oh, it doesn't talk about acid in this one, but fire. Acid is an obvious extension if you thought about it.
See?
Spoilers.
See?
Way to go, Zach. I will say, if you have not read this book yet and you want to, now would be the perfect time to stop this, read it, and come back. It is, honestly, it's a really fast read. We read it in like 2-3 days?
At most, yeah.
And we, we're pretty good at binging, but even then, I mean, we're busy, so.
Yeah,
Take that
I'm a
with
mom
a-
of 3 kids.
Yeah.
All right. So, and I finished it really quickly.
Took me a week.
Well,
Yeah,
'cause I only had
that's
a
not
week.
bad. Yeah, that's not bad. Not bad at all. So definitely, and we will also be splitting this episode into 2. So you're going to hear this episode, and then we're splitting the book talk into another episode next week. So we'll give you 2 weeks of talk for this book, which is how much we all loved it, I think. So yeah, Ariel and I traded notes in our chat so that we knew what we were talking about. And the first thing I said, which is honestly the most important part to me, I love Scythe Faraday so much. It's probably a little bit creepy and weird, but I can't help it. I love him.
Imagine, okay, everybody loves Pedro Pascal,
Oh, yes.
right? So imagine him playing a Scythe, taking care of 2 teenagers, and that's Scythe Faraday. He's just
Legitimately.
the best. We love him.
He's honorable and compassionate
Oh, he's very compassionate, yeah.
He's
and
just such a
serious
good-
about what he
yeah.
does.
Yeah.
Such a good man.
He believes that Scythes should not want to kill. He thinks if you want to kill, then you shouldn't have the job.
I agree.
Yeah, I really agree with that too. And it comes into, you kind of get the feel, the tension rises throughout the book. You kind of have a feeling that there's a group of Scythes who are like super flashy. They want to be celebrities. And you also get to a scene where they glean an entire airplane and it's not pretty.
They enjoy it so much
it's
too.
a spectacle. It's
horrible.
Yeah, it's really, really off-putting, and that the tension builds throughout the book, leading up to
A reckoning.
yes, it's a pretty crazy ride. And then the next thing was the ring part.
Oh yeah. Okay. So, Scythes have a ring that grants immunity. So
For 1 year.
yeah, for 1 year. So if you're gleaned, the rest of your family has immunity for a year. So, and the only way you can get this immunity is by, they have them kiss the ring, but it's like any form of your DNA gets on that ring, it transmits that to the immunity database, and it lets all the other sides know that they can't glean you.
Okay, before we move on too far, what do you guys think about the term gleaning? I looked it up because for like glean, I thought was like just to understand or something like that, or like
I thought it
pick
was
out.
harvest.
Like that's the old way of using it. It means harvest. Yeah.
Well, that's like pretty much. Yeah, that's pretty much what they didn't want it to be called anything that was harsh or off-putting.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, it already is going to be, if that makes sense.
They didn't want to be reapers.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what's partially why they weren't allowed to wear black either.
Yeah.
So what does it mean?
I just told you. It just means harvest. That's not the like typical term that is used the way it's used nowadays.
I liked.
Well, how's it used nowadays?
It's to extract information, to glean something.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay,
the historical usage to gather.
You're harvesting information. They were harvesting human life.
Well, technically, it's to gather, not harvest. But you gather it after you harvest. I'm just saying.
I guess I'm just old, and I knew the old meaning.
There's one part specifically. I remember whenever I originally read it for book club, I messaged Ariel about this specific point. At one point, Citra takes Faraday his nightly bedtime milk.
He's such an old man.
He really
I love it.
the most. But there's one night she takes it in, but he's already asleep, and so instead of just sitting it there and wasting it, she downs the milk, and then she kind of just starts looking at his ring, which is sitting on his bedside table. And she starts thinking, like, why doesn't he wear it whenever he sleeps? Kind of goes off wondering, and then she really starts looking at it, and she picks it up, and she notices that he is actually watching her, and she's like, oh my gosh, I'm sorry, it's a whole big thing. And then I won't say specifically what else happens there, but he, at that point, he goes, Rowan will bring me my milk from now on. And she just like, I am so sorry I've disappointed you. And he goes, you misunderstand. Like, this has been a test. I wanted to see how long it would take you to get it out of your system. And it took you a lot longer than I thought. And eventually he looks at her and just with a conspiratorial grin says, I wonder how long it'll take Rowan. And I don't know why.
It was so good. That was just a really good scene. Because you could see that, he understood that they were young and they would be curious.
Yeah.
And he didn't want to shame them for that. And he wanted to let them get it out of their system. But also it was like one of those tests, to see like if they wanted this power that you essentially have as a scythe. And like how much they want it. Because, if somebody just picks up the ring and they're like, oh, yeah, I got this, obviously they would just be wanting the power from being a scythe.
Yeah.
Maybe we should talk a little bit about how they were chosen to be the apprentices.
That's a good point, yeah.
Okay, well, Citra was chosen one evening, essentially. He came to, Scythe Faraday came to their, was it an apartment? They lived in, an apartment complex. So he came to their apartment, and they obviously were all scared because they thought they were going to get gleaned. And her mom, cooked him a really good dinner, and he just sat through the dinner, eating, and, everybody was silent. And she just got fed up, which, honestly, I think this would be me in that situation, because I am incredibly sassy also. But she was like, if you're going to glean with one of us, just do it already. And he's like, I'm not here to glean, I was just here to eat. And she picks up his empty plate, and she's like, well, you're done, so go. Which, same. I would also be like that. He was I guess impressed with the fact that she challenged him, and she was so disgusted by it,
Yeah.
I think that's more the thing, that she was disgusted by the prospect of gleaning, and it's like...
Yeah, and he did say it was nice to be challenged and stuff like that, so he did like the fact that she was, sassy to him. And then Rowan was chosen because Scythe Faraday came to his school and gleaned one of his classmates. And Rowan was like, can't you let him say goodbye or, show some kind of compassion and stuff like that. And Scythe Faraday was like, no, that's not happening. And Rowan decides to stay with the boy that is getting gleaned, even though they're not friends. And he holds his hand through it. And Scythe Faraday electrocutes the boy.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, if you hold his hand, it's likely that you're going to go deadish, which is what they call you when you die, but you get brought back to life later. And he's like, I don't care. So Rowan showed a lot of compassion, and that's why he picked him.
It knocked him across the room.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a bad.
It was a big one.
Yeah.
Also, he was like a pariah at school after that for the rest of his time at school. It was pretty bad.
Yeah.
Everyone was like, you brought the scythe there. You did this. This was your fault. And finally, he was just like, yep, did it. That was my uncle, even though it wasn't his uncle.
Yeah, not at all.
They left him alone after that. I think it's the fact that Citra didn't show any. I mean, she was afraid, but she didn't show the fear because everybody's like, oh, doing everything for them. And it's like, there's no one to actually talk to because they are constantly like, whatever you say, what can we do?
Yeah.
And she was just like, no.
And I love that. Love that about her.
Yeah.
Like, even during their apprenticeship, she was like, why?
Yeah.
Why are you doing this?
Yeah. He was a little more harsh sometimes then. But he needed to be.
He did. He did. But
he did.
He didn't reprimand her as bad as you would think that he would.
Yeah.
And I think that was, I don't know, I like that.
I did too. I just really appreciated how he handled each of the kids because they're different, but they're also similar. The further I get into the books, I really feel like Rowan is actually just a mini Scythe Faraday. And I love that too.
Oh man. And things go so wrong for Rowan.
Oh,
I just want to hug him and keep him safe.
Yeah, poor guy.
We don't need to get into that though yet.
Yes.
But
because I haven't read them.
Yeah. Well, even the second half of the book.
Yeah.
Well, that's
no, it's all of this. We're talking about the second half of the book. I was very happy, I gotta say, when they said there was gonna be no romance between the two. That was great, except that it was a lie.
You got to think though, they're taken away from their family, everyone they know, and shoved into this life where neither of them wants to do the things that they do. You're going to form a companionship there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But even then, they're also teenagers.
Yeah. And, literally there was one kiss and she's like, okay, it's out of our system, we can move on.
It's a very...
Which I love that. It was not so much, a romance.
Yeah.
It was more of a, I care about you and don't want things to happen to you.
Yeah.
But also, I'm going to look out for myself as well, which is important.
Yeah, I really dug that.
I don't know. I think they were more about looking out for the other person when it actually came down to it. It's like, I care about this person and I will sacrifice myself to keep them alive.
Well, I think Rowan was very much like that.
She was too.
Citra was less like that. I mean, she did it, but she was less like that.
She was more...
What they're doing is wrong, and I'm going to fight it.
Well, and it's also, she thought about it more. She's like, this is what I can do to save us both.
Yeah. And it just gets better later in the books.
It really does. So rereading for me this time around, I told Ariel the foreshadowing that is only clear after you read it again, for me anyway, is insane.
Yeah. Hearing the Scythe journals at the end of each chapter.
Uh-huh.
That really, really just kind of smacked me in the face this go around. I wondered how I missed it, but then, you're blind going into the story, so you don't know what the foreshadowing is. And the narrator, for me, was absolutely amazing.
He was so good.
Man.
So good.
And I think that's also a heavy reason why I love Scythe Faraday so much.
Yeah.
The voice for Faraday is fantastic. And then Goddard, it's the same narrator, but they sound like two completely different men. And it's insane to me.
So much too. It's funny that I'm listening to the same guy and I'm like, oh, I love it when you do this voice. But I also hate you when you do this voice.
All right, that's a good point.
I didn't listen.
The other Goddard is the main, I guess, antagonist of the book. If you haven't read it and you're listening to this, which is silly, you should read the book. But he's the main antagonist. He's what they call a New Order side versus Faraday, who is like an old guard side. So basically, you get the people who are the New Order, who think that, you should enjoy being a Scythe and you should play it up.
Yeah. You are a celebrity. You should,
You should be worshipped. Take everything that you want.
Yeah.
And old guard is, it's just basically you have respect for the profession. You don't want to glean people. You have to, it's your duty. And you try to make it as good and be as respectful as possible to the people you're gleaning. But you don't enjoy it.
Yeah. I do want to add in here that Scythes are required by law to keep a journal every day. And these journals are on record for the public.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're listening to the book or reading the book, there is a journal entry at the end of every chapter from different scythes. Most of them are from scythes that you get to know in the book. Every now and then they'll have one that's like, from like one of the original scythes that are like dead now. But so when Mallory was talking about the foreshadowing and stuff like that from the journals, it's because you get to read parts of these journals. So it's really nice.
Oh, yeah, that was actually kind of a weird thing, though, right? The fact that there are no more of the original scythes. I know why they did it, like, plotting-wise, but it seems odd that they would have all self-gleaned at that point, because it sounds like it's only been a few hundred years. Yeah.
Well, I mean,
I think it's been longer.
Scythe Faraday and Scythe Curie
are like 200.
200 to 300 years old.
Yeah.
So I imagine that the original scythes probably would have been like around 500 years old at least.
By this point, if they hadn't self-gleaned, right?
Yeah.
It's been like something
they didn't say how long ago it was.
No, but they said
lost track.
Curie, her grandma was in the time of mortality.
Yeah, but she also knew some of the original scythes.
Yeah, they did also know some of them. So there was some overlap, but they weren't that old. It seems like once you get to like 200 or 300, that's when you start, like, the self-cleaning happens. I was just very surprised it happened that early.
Well, I think if you had killed people every day, or almost every day, for 200 years, you'd be like, I'm done.
Yeah, that would weigh on you a lot. Because not many people are like, okay, you can go ahead and glean me. Because that's one of the things, you're not supposed to glean people who want to be gleaned.
Yeah.
Which is
weird. You would think that's weird, but
I'm surprised anybody wants to be gleaned based on how their nanites work, honestly. I wrote this down as I was reading.
I don't want to get into
book.
it because that's the second half of the book, but I kind of get it. But okay, so the nanites, do we want to talk about that real fast too?
Yeah, the nanites are dope.
The Thunderhead, like, kind of describe this world a little bit for them.
I think it'd be good because that way, for those who haven't read it,
they'll understand.
Yeah.
Okay, so the Thunderhead is the AI that people have created, and it basically has eyes everywhere, it uses all the cameras and stuff like that. It tracks your nanites that are in your body that, they can alter your moods, they can heal you, they dull your pain. If you're overweight, they can remedy that.
They up your metabolism.
Yeah. Basically everything is taken care of for you. Nobody is in poverty unless they want to be in poverty.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing really to strive for in this world, but people still work towards things, but there's nothing you're always going to be taken care of no matter what.
Yep.
And the Thunderhead is unable to break laws. He's unable to lie, right?
Mm-hmm. So you thought the Thunderhead was male?
Well, yeah.
I thought it was female.
Well, see, I listened to the book.
Yeah.
And he's portrayed as a male.
I read it, so I thought.
Which is, that.
Yeah.
Very fair point. Yeah.
But he's AI, so he's neither really, but. What else was I going to talk about? Oh, the nanites and stuff like that, yeah. You don't have to use your nanites like that. They have what's called tweakers, where they can tweak your nanites. And the High Blade, which is essentially the president of that area's scythes, was overweight. And he could have altered his nanites to where he's not. But he didn't want to, so you had that freedom to do that.
Yeah, he wouldn't be big and imposing. It was like a psychological game that he was playing with the rest of the scythes.
Yeah.
Would you take the nanites? Would you guys do it?
Absolutely.
I think so, yeah.
Are you kidding me? What is the downside to the nanites?
Especially if it could make my moods better.
I would love it. I would love that.
Yeah, it's just all and
honestly,
chill out.
The idea of going splatting, which for those who haven't read it, splatting is when you jump off a building and go splat on the pavement. And then you get revived later. So you're good.
Scrape you up off the pavement.
Yeah, and revive you.
Honestly,
I don't know that I would do splatting per se, but there are things that I'm curious how it would feel, like being shot by a gun. I imagine that would hurt super, super bad, obviously. But I also have this morbid curiosity where I'm like, what would that feel like?
Bad.
And so, the idea of being revived like that would be awesome.
I do want to try the ice cream though.
Right?
They've
Their
talked it up
ice cream
so
sounds so good.
They did play it
So
up a bit.
much.
I do wonder, just like you die and you're brought back to life, and if your brain gets destroyed, he puts memories back in your head effectively, right?
Yeah.
Sorry, the Thunderhead. The Thunderhead puts memories back in your head, right? So I wonder, it makes me question whether it's actually still you at that point, you know?
I think they discussed that more. Is it the third book?
I think maybe.
I think it is the third book. They discuss that more in the third book, and it's actually pretty interesting. I mean, basically all of your memories are backed up into your own cloud, essentially. And so even after you die or are gleaned, your family members can still go and talk to you.
And they'll answer, and you'll answer
them.
Yeah.
That was in the first one.
That is in the first one, yeah.
I mean, it does go in more depth later.
It goes further in.
Like
on
there's other options for people that aren't discussed in this book. Like, say, you're an unsavory, right? And you get really, 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 really bad. And then you get super, super depressed and you don't want to do all this stuff. There's another option for you. I don't want to go into what that is.
Because I don't know.
Yeah.
But, I mean, which is an interesting concept in itself.
It really is, yeah.
I think this book brings up a lot of very interesting concepts.
It does.
And about our human behavior.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like it a lot because it's not AI is the bad guy.
No.
It is humans, which, I mean, we've kind of touched on this in other topics, but I mean, it makes sense, really. I mean, the Thunderhead became so advanced, it finally became sentient. Not exactly, but
pretty much.
Kind of, pretty much. And it's said in the book and throughout the series that the Thunderhead is amazing at parenting. So it parents kids whose parents either are no longer with us or they don't pay attention to the kids. It's essentially, you can ask it almost anything unless you're a Scythe.
Yeah, he will not talk to Scythe.
Yeah, he does not interfere in any Scythe business. And it's a long, I think it's incredible. There's no hunger. Extinction has been wiped off the earth. Forests, rainforests, everything rehabilitated, brought back. It's so cool to think about a book where AI is not the bad guy. And that stays true throughout the entire series.
Yeah. He thinks of humans as like his children almost, and he's got to take care of them. And the world that they live in, so it's amazing. Like, I want us to have that.
Speaking of children, I cannot understand why they let so many kids be born. Like, I get he doesn't, the Thunderhead does not want to interfere with this stuff, but does talk about overpopulation a decent chunk in the book. So
yeah, well, that's what the Scythes are for.
Yeah, but so before they talk about the numbers in there at some point in the book, but I did some math as well, and it does nothing. The Scythes do absolutely freaking nothing. They do 5 million people per year. This population is well more than 10 billion. It's probably like 30, 40 billion at this point. So, I mean, they say in the book that the Scythes don't actually appreciably affect the population growth. And if they were to do it, it would be something like, I can't remember what the number was. It was something huge. I don't actually think it's in this book, but it would have to be a lot more size to be able to do it. And was it?
Yeah, but the Thunderhead goes out of his way to make sure that everybody has enough food and the Earth is still taken care of, even with that population.
Yeah, but at some point, it's going to reach a saturation point where there is not enough resources that could be made.
You keep reading the books, and you'll understand.
Well, I'm just saying. We're talking about this book, so.
I'm just saying,
What I didn't understand with the population, and there's no way I could have, gleaned a child, that I would have just had to have been, wrote up or whatever.
Oh, yeah, that's another thing. The bias.
I couldn't have done that.
Yeah.
But the thing with the population is, this AI is incredibly intelligent. Why are we not going off-world?
So they do talk about that in the book a little bit.
Oh no, they're giving me the look. They're giving me the look. I guess maybe something happens later.
Okay, so I'm guessing this happened in the
they
third book.
do talk in the first book. They do talk about how they tried.
Yeah,
And
they
it
tried
was a
And
massive
a few
failure.
things.
Yeah, it was a massive failure.
And it's almost certainly it's got to be sabotage or something like that. That's the only thing that makes any sense.
If you keep reading the books, you understand. Like, it goes more in depth as to why they are not off-world. And is it Gleanings, the last one? Okay, the last one. So there's the 3, and then there's Gleanings, which is like a group of short stories about different size and stuff like that. You hear about what happened with their failed space stuff.
Well, that's nice, dear, but we're talking about this book, and in this book, it's not explained.
I was just answering her. So chill.
I get you, but the point is, based on the information we have, it has to be some sort of human intervention that is causing it, right?
These are the questions you ask that get you to continue reading the book.
Yes.
Yeah.
I agree, but we can talk about them now, right? That's what I'm getting at.
You can't have all the answers to all the questions you have just in this one book when it's a trilogy. You have to have those questions, because then you're like, maybe it'll be in the next book.
And I think the next
question,
the next question I have, and I know the answer to at least maybe 2 people, would you be a Scythe? Is that something you would want to do?
Want to? No. If I got chosen to do it, I think I'm a strong enough person that I could. But I don't think that that's something I would want to do.
I agree.
Yeah, ditto. I just don't. The thing is, though, I am not entirely sure that this would be a necessary. I think I'd be freaking tonist, honestly, if I had to choose between one of those 2 things.
Oh my gosh.
Well, seriously, I just don't think that. I think there are better solutions than the Scythedom for this problem. I think that population limitation would have been a much better option than having people who go around and kill people. Like, just don't have so many frigging kids.
Well, that's because they reset their clock. So what is it called? It's like
turning the
corner. Anyway, and then they have another whole family and more kids. It's like, I think maybe when you turn the corner, maybe by the 3rd time, you're sterilized.
Yeah,
you just can't do it anymore.
Which, I mean, maybe eventually that would be a thing, but
because I mean, it would be weird to have a half sister that's like 150 years younger. I mean, it's just
I don't think
family dynamics would be.
But I don't think they think of it that way, though, because they're so used to it.
I know.
You know, so, like, for us, yes.
Yeah.
But for them, it's like, you know, like, I don't know if you remember, but during one of the gleanings, he goes to give everybody in the family immunity, except for the grandmother's new husband, because he's a bot.
Oh, yeah.
What did you think about that? Like, they don't really touch on that in the books at all. The fact that there's bots that are so lifelike that you wouldn't know. No. And I'm like, that would give me more worry than anything else. I'd be like, are you a robot?
See, that could be the dark turn to this. Like, where, like, maybe the Thunderhead is, like, infiltrating bots and eventually humans will not be there anymore.
It'd probably be better.
For me, it was an entirely different way of looking at things. Like Mallory said, it's like the AI is never the good guy. This time it was. Yeah. And it really was. Yeah. Or from what I can tell. The whole thought of gleaning people and having to meet quotas and you have to take so many from this and this and this is, I found kind of disturbing. But, I mean, to me, it's just unsavory. But I understand, too. Like, I don't know. I think the world, even though it was perfect, it seemed like unperfect because it's like you didn't have anything to like look forward to.
Yeah.
And they do kind of talk about that in the book, about how there's like nothing really to.
Because too perfect. I mean, we're
super work towards or anything like that.
So, anyway, that's my thoughts.
I think this is a great book because it brings up all these questions about mortality and, you know, what's right and wrong and morally gray areas. And it really just makes you think.
It does.
And I love that, you know. And also, you know, the whole, you know, disturbing thing where, you know, people get killed all the time. No, but I like the fact that they had, like, even though they had a quota they had to meet, that they couldn't be biased.
Yes.
I like that, like, you get reprimanded if you do too many of, like, one ethnicity or too many of, like,
an age group.
Or, like, one guy got in trouble because he only gleaned ugly people.
Yeah, kill them uglies.
Like,
nobody likes them.
I liked that, you know, that they not only did they have to meet that quota, but they got reprimanded if they didn't do, like if they did too many or they didn't do enough. I like that they had those rules.
My final thoughts are Scythe Faraday is my favorite.
I knew that was coming.
But overall, I genuinely do really love this book and the series. So if you read this before or are wanting to read it after, I highly recommend it. The series is amazing. And actually this year, was it the beginning of the year?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, he released Gleanings, which is short stories that will really bring everything full circle. And there's some really cool stuff that kind of just explores the world a little bit more too. So that's definitely a great one to add to the list.
So overall, I like the book a lot. There's a bunch more open questions I have just about this, and we can discuss next time. But one thing I want to leave you guys with, if you are listening to the podcast right now, before the next episode, it might be a good idea to check out Season 2, Episode 3 of Love, Death, Robots, because it's sort of related to the same sort of thing. Check that out. I'm going to discuss it next time. I know that you guys actually can't watch it because through the magic of podcasting, we're doing 2 episodes today. So they're not going to have time to watch it.
Is this a TV show?
It's Love, Death, Robots is a TV show on Netflix.
Never even heard of it.
Me either.
It's fantastic. Well, the first season's fantastic. Second season's a little bit sketch, but overall it's really good. But yeah, those are my main things. I'll talk more next week about all of the rest of my notes here because we didn't get to hardly any of them.
You could lead the conversation next time.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Okay. Thanks for listening to another episode of Reading Room Ruffians. And remember, only the best libraries have librarians who don't shush you.